All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to another Play and Explain video. Today we will be looking at an arbitrary Latin America once again, but we did no move last week, so this week we're going to head into NMPZ. It should be a little bit tougher, of course, as we're not going to have full access to car meta, which is pretty important, I'd say, in a lot of Latin American situations. But let's try it. I'm going to create the challenge link here and grab that link for you guys, which will be in the description down below. Don't forget to play it before you play. You watch the video, essentially, and then you can learn. All right, NMPZ here. Let's do it. All right, we start off in Sun is north here. I'm going to talk through the country first, how I'm getting the country, and then I will talk through maybe a potential region guess if I have one. So Sun is north here. It looks like we can see shadows casting south, so we should be in the southern hemisphere, although it is quite far above us. We have some volcano-looking, glacier-looking structures here, and it is very, very dry and arid, so automatically we are thinking somewhere Atacama adjacent, whether that be Chile, Argentina, or Peru. And with these random volcanoes and this very wide dirt road, we can rule out Peru because we would usually have a black and white striped signpost on the speed sign in Peru, so Peru is out. And then between Argentina and Chile, I think with the volcanoes here like this and a road that's made of dirt going through, just kind of reminds me of a lot of these national park reserves that will be out here. With a bunch of volcanoes. There's a bunch of volcanoes on the border with Bolivia, as well as this border with Argentina here. And a lot of them are still in Generation 3, whereas in Argentina, a lot of it will be covered more so in Gen 4. And it doesn't look like all the stuff that's down here. There's not as much coverage, clearly going through the Andean mountain range here. And not as much coverage going around here, where this would be mostly Gen 4, I believe. So we should be on the Chilean side with all of that. And yeah, we'll just be probably guessing in one of these volcano reserves, as, you know, we do have something there. And it was all the way up on the Bolivian border there, but we do get the right country, so we will start off with a 1 streak as we move into a Guatemala here. So Guatemala is going to have the side wing mirrors with a little bit of the car showing on both sides. Guatemala also likes to use the painted bottoms to the poles, so like green or red usually. This looks like a 2-lane highway. So if we zoom into Guatemala here, I would say there is a decent amount of 2-lane highways. I believe, okay, this isn't 2-lane here, but a lot of the highways around Guatemala City will be 2 lanes. There are a couple more that I just can't think of right now. But on this one, yeah, I'll probably just click near Guatemala City with this 2-laned highway. And we'll see, yeah, it was the CA2 here, somewhat findable, but you're never going to be too far away in Guatemala, so I don't really value Guatemala region guessing as much, and we'll move in around 3 here. All right, so to get the country here, we do have a single yellow center line. This is most common in Mexico out of all the Latin American countries, essentially, that have Generation 4 camera. And we do have what I believe to be a hexagonal pole here, which is a trademark pole shape of Mexico. And we also have this square style plate, which is something similar that you'll get in the United States and Canada. So North America is going to have a lot of these style of plates. And the architecture with these colorful houses and the flatness definitely fit all for Mexico as well. I think the main thing that you use here is probably the plate. Colombia will typically have yellow ones. Ecuador doesn't really have an abundance of Gen 4 like this. It does exist, but it will usually be truck coverage, and you can see a bigger blur usually if you're looking forward at the car. Peru does have Gen 4 like this, but it won't have a hexagonal style pole with a single yellow center line most of the time. And these rock walls are quite common in Mexico as well. Looks somewhat tropical here. I'm not really sure on the region guess on this one. I think I just lean more towards Mexico City, to be completely honest with you. with a bit more colorful houses. You get more red brick buildings as you move a bit further west in this area here. And it looks even kind of tropical. Like, I could consider a Veracruz as well. And you get more rock walls as you move more towards the Yucatan Peninsula. So let's just go here as a hedge, and it does end up being Chiapas there, which is fair enough. And we'll move on to the next round. All right, looks like we're back in Guatemala here, but we're looking at the back of the car. And if you usually have car meta, you can usually see this boxy style blur on the back of the car. So in Latin America, that's going to be countries like Guatemala and the Dominican Republic, and then some of the small islands that are here that belong to Colombia. Might be missing a couple. There's obviously like national park cars and stuff like that, but main road coverage like this, if you get this boxy blur. And Guatemala does typically use a single yellow line as well, just like we saw in that Mexico round previous. But obviously it'll all be stuck in Gen 3 with this boxy car. And the plate format going to be the same size, that roughly square shape. So with all of those things, Guatemala makes a lot of sense. We do have a mountain north here with somewhat flatness here. I'm just going to try this road. Why not? It was a bit further up that road, and we're looking at this smaller mountain here, I guess, would be a bit closer to that mountain there. But fair enough. Regardless, it's fine. And we'll move on to our last round here. Which is a bit more difficult from a country perspective as well as a region guessing perspective. All right. So we do have these eucalyptus style trees with like peeling bark. That is most common in Brazil, I'd say. I would say the soil color also fits most for Brazil with this like reddish iron colored soil. You can see like very dark red soil here on the shoulder. And usually in Latin America, if you see red soil like this and you click Brazil, it's usually a pretty good guess. I think we have to make the most educated guess that we can in this situation, and I think that probably would be Brazil with the red soil. These wooden stick fences are quite common in both like Colombia and Brazil. They can be found everywhere, of course, but to section off fields like this, most common in like northern Brazil and Colombia. I don't know if the landscape really fits for Colombia because, as we know, Colombia is a very mountainous country, and this valley seems quite wide. Could be something like Neiva or Cali here are probably the two valley options, which are certainly possible, I would say. But I think with the red soil, it leans me more towards a Brazil here because it has a very diverse landscape. And I think with rolling hills here, with a mixture of rolling hills and the wooden stick fences, it's a little bit off because I guess you could go southern Bahia is certainly a possibility. But the stick fences push me further northeast in the country, whereas the rolling hills like this that are very green in Generation 3, which is what this coverage is taken in, I don't know, doesn't really fit as much for here because you will get a lot of dry Generation 3 coverage in the northeast. So I think we're going to split the difference here and go like North Minas Gerais because Minas Gerais will have a lot of rolling hills. So we'll give it a go. And it was actually the two places that it could be. It actually ends up being coastal Pernambuco there. Okay. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. We're on the coast there. It is quite green. And this general rolling hills landscape does make a lot of sense as you get closer to the coast. So like stuff like Sergipe, Alagoas, and coastal Pernambuco will have a lot of these green rolling hills in Gen 3. Makes a lot of sense. With the stick fence, I guess I could have thought about it a little bit more, but it was more so a hedge to go Minas Gerais there. All right. Well, we do have a 5-country streak, which is good, but the score wasn't that great. And you can see the NMPZ game gets a little bit harder. All right. Let's hop into game 2 here, and let's talk through some stuff. All right. First thing we notice here, to get the country, is going to be this trident style pole. So this pole is almost exclusive to Uruguay. Another thing that fits for Uruguay is the Generation 3 form of the camera, which Uruguay is still stuck in. No Gen 4 in Uruguay, as opposed to its surrounding neighbors in both Argentina and Brazil. Both have Generation 4. Whereas Uruguay stuck in Generation 3. So the main thing I'm using to make this guess is the trident pole to get Uruguay here and the Gen 3 camera. It is a bit... So the meta generally for Uruguay is if it's a bit less overcast, like more sunny, Like southwest is always a good guess. Redder soil could fit for a bit more west as well, because this panhandle of Argentina is quite red soiled. So yeah, we'll try it. And all right, just ends up being Montevideo department, but we do get the right country there, and we'll move on to round 2. All right. To get the country here, we will be using the ladder pull here, which is pretty much exclusive to Brazil. You will get a ladder pull in Chile, but it's a different style. One with a bit bigger gaps in between the ladder sections. So Brazil seems like the choice. Plus, to confirm, we do have a black back of sign here, which is pretty exclusive to Brazil in Latin America, in terms of most of road or traffic signs being painted black on the back. Brazil also typically uses double yellow lines, sometimes with cat eyes in the middle, like you see here, circling my mouse. And if not, you'll get like these short white like dots in between as well, where cat eyes would be. So Brazil uses cat eyes, I think, more than like most of the other Latin American countries. So that is a pretty good indication. And plus, obviously, besides the ladder pull and the black back sign. In terms of region guessing here, this one's a bit tough as well. We do have no support on this poll, which generally, a general rule for that is mainly going northeast. So this northeast section of Brazil here is going to have a lot of no supports. That being said, I'm really not sure. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule. I guess I'm just going Maranhão here. With the no supports, it is quite green, I'd say. And, like, me personally, I would probably go more Amazonian, but you do expect to see a bit more percentage of supports as you move a bit more west. But, yeah, we'll just try this. Okay, it ends up being Coastal Bahia, which is definitely a very tough one to get here. Certainly makes a lot of sense with it being so green. But yeah, this is a tough get, I do feel. I don't know. I don't really know if there's that much to talk about here without going into, like, I don't really know car color. But yeah, definitely a tough landscape to decipher, but it certainly makes sense. It's just hard to think of in the moment. All right, well, we get the country right. We'll move on to round 8 of our 25 round series here. The main thing that we're going to be using to get the country here is going to be the car, actually. So this car with the diagonal spirally antenna is going to be found in Latin American countries of Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and Brazil. And the black variant of the car, you can see how it's kind of black underneath the blur of the car, is going to be found 99% of the time in Colombia. There is some black car that exists like in the Rio, Minas Gerais, and Sao Paulo area, and then definitely does exist in Mexico, never in Ecuador. But most of the Mexico and Brazil Gen 3 black car coverage has been overwritten because there is an abundance of Gen 4 in those two countries. So with the black Gen 3 car, this should be Colombia here. And in terms of a region guess, it does look like we're quite high up in terms of altitude. Judging by, just a feel for the trees a little bit. And I think around Bogota does make a lot of sense. So we'll just try there. And it was all the way down here. Very tough to region guess Colombia. But we'll move on to round 9. All right. We have that single yellow line that we talked about. So to get the country here, I would probably use this first off and foremost. The single yellow line, most common in Mexico out of all of the Latin American countries. Sun can't really tell where it is, so it's quite unusable. But another thing that we can use is going to be this car color. So you have this white, blue, white striped car, which does not exist in Colombia and Peru. But it does exist in both Brazil and Argentina. Brazil, like I mentioned, is going to use double yellow lines most of the time. So having a single yellow line is definitely a clue that points me a bit more towards Mexico. And Argentina, although it does like to use single yellow line, sometimes I think with this hilliness and the greenness, I think percentage-wise, it is much more likely to be Mexico. And I think region guess-wise, This area, like near Colima, Nayarit, Jalisco, definitely makes a lot of sense. On this south coast here, you won't typically get a lot of hills on this north coast. It looks quite tropical, like you can kind of feel a coastal vibe with some of these plants. It doesn't look like deserty like you will see in the middle part of Mexico. So I would say we're probably on one of the coasts, and you won't get as many hills like in this area on the Gulf of Mexico coast. So definitely the south coast feels to make a bit more sense to me. And yeah, we'll just go for a Colima guess here. And it does end up being Guerrero, but fair enough, we do get that south coast vibe here on the Pacific. And we'll move on to our last round here, in which it looks like Generation 2 camera. So Gen 2 camera in Latin America, only going to be Mexico. I mean, it exists in Brazil, like in the bigger city, Sao Paulo, Rio area. But yeah, most of that has just been overwritten. So you see Gen 2 like this with like Spanish, Mexico, got to be the play. Octagonal pole, I mean, it says Mexico here. Oh no, it says Mexico, which I read wrong. But Mexico does also like to use an abundance of black water tanks. Plus we have that like square style plate. Looks like I don't think it's a Utah plate, but yeah, regardless, with the walls here, this is a tough get. I'd probably go Yucatan here. I think with the trees, and the rock wall here makes a lot of sense. Plus, I would say the buildings do kind of as well. It definitely feels like more of the north coast vibe. I think this very white building makes sense for Yucatan as well, so we'll try it. And okay, yeah, I mean, just a tough one. Just ends up being Colima there, which is where we guessed on the last round. I guess you wouldn't get as many as these houses. Like, these tiled roofs feel kind of odd for like Yucatan here, but I thought this side here looked a bit more Yuc to me. But fair enough. All right, we are on a 10 streak. We're gonna aim for that 25. We'll see if we get there as we hop into seed 3. Let's do it. All right. Okay. So to get the country here, very, very foggy camera, and we are in Gen 3 once again. That foggy camera Gen 3 is exceptionally common in the country of Uruguay. And Uruguay, as well as Argentina, does... Well, actually, I don't think Argentina has these exact road lines. It won't have 2 yellow solid lines with white dashes in the middle. These are kind of similar to the lines that you get in Saskatchewan. But yeah, in Gen 3, with these double yellow lines with white dashes, ever so slightly showing up in between, should be Uruguay here. In the distance, we can also make out a traffic sign with a very thick white signpost, which is also a Uruguay trademark. Looks like, to me, when you get some decently sized hills here, which bigger hills are mainly going to be found near and around Minas, and then like on this north border with Brazil. I think the north border with Brazil makes some sense. You can kind of see the terrain here. So we'll try that. And yeah, we were a bit more southeast, but generally this area does get a decent amount of hills on the border here. So using hills to your advantage is definitely good. All right. So country-wise here, we have all white lines, which is quite rare for most countries in South America. I think the only 2 countries that will use all white lines consistently is going to be Chile and Argentina. And this one looks way more like Argentina here, because a lot of places in Chile, that'll be this flat. I mean, you will see a mountain or 2 somewhere. Plus, most Chilean poles will usually have an indent to them. And we don't see one here. This looks like a full wooden pole. And we have white front of car, which is quite common in Argentina as well. That being said, it being very green like this, we have these kind of plants, which I've seen a good amount in BA. I'm not sure what the exact name for it is. But a very good quality road as well makes sense for the capital province. And yeah, it looks like we're just on a like a pretty major road here. It's lining stuff up NMPZ is always hard, but this looks okay, so we'll try it. Wouldn't be surprised if this was more coastal even, but I think I like BA with these, whatever kind of plants these are here. So let's give it a go. All right, I mean, similar angle there, but we were in Buenos Aires province, so it's not the worst guess overall, but it was very close to the border. Okay, we have a doozy here. This is quite interesting. We do have the car that I mentioned that's going to be in Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Mexico, so we can automatically look at those 4 countries overall. Now, I'm immediately ruling out Brazil, I think. I think the wooden houses are quite odd. I guess you could sometimes find them in the Amazon, but the metal roofs also don't really fit for me. I feel like you would get a bit more tiled roofs in most of Brazil. Also, this very dark, like dark brown, black looking soil. I would expect this to be usually more red soil in Brazil. Brazil, very red soil, abundant. So we're ruling that out immediately. I don't immediately know the country here, so I'm kind of trying to work it out myself. So if I'm removing Brazil from the equation, that leaves us with Colombia, Ecuador, and Mexico. And I think I lean most Ecuador here. I do feel like also wooden houses would be a bit weird for Mexico as well as the soil color. I guess it could exist in this area here, like the soil color, but I don't know about the wooden houses. I feel like it's a bit more common probably in both Ecuador and Colombia. Yeah, this is a bit tough talking through this. Because if you look at this and you don't give me the car, it honestly looks like Malaysia's Sabah or something. Like, if you were to remove the car from this equation completely, I don't know. All right, well, back to my original train of thought. We're back to Colombia and Ecuador if I'm ruling out Mexico, just because I feel like the architecture doesn't really fit. Looks like we're building some kind of canoe or some kind of boat here, maybe, with a tree log. So I guess you can hypothesize that we might be close to a river or the ocean even potentially, which makes sense with how it looks. Decent abundance of banana plants here, which I would say is a bit more common, just randomly growing wildly in Ecuador. And Ecuador generally, like Colombia, as we know, very hilly country. This is a bit more flat. Obviously, you can get flat places in Colombia as well. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhere down here. But I think I'm going to try Ecuador here because generally I'm going off of the flatness. Colombia, I would expect to be a bit more hilly. You will get a lot of flat parts up here, obviously, with this big mountain here, like in the north part of Colombia. But I would expect it to be a bit more dry, a little less tropical looking. So I think we will be going Ecuador on this one. I don't think this is a black car, by the way. Like, you can see it looks kind of white. So, like, obviously if it was black car here, we can't slam Ecuador. We have to slam Colombia. But it looks white to me. I hope I'm not misdiagnosing the color of the car there, but yeah, let's just try this. Yeah, I mean, I think I did circle this area as a possibility. And this makes a lot of sense. I really thought about it. So in this area, if we're a bit closer, like we have a bit, we do have a lot of like Afro-Colombians in this area, like especially on the ocean here. So you will see a bit more darker skinned individuals on the Colombian coast. Could be something that you use, especially in Tumaco and Buenaventura, which are the two like major countries Gen 4 that's going to have a lot of coverage there. I didn't expect really to be Gen 3 because if you drop yourself in Tumaco like proper, like near the main road here, this is all going to be Gen 4. But yeah, it certainly makes a lot of sense for it to be Tumaco. Yeah, this is what I was mainly concerned about. But we're not too far off. Like, points-wise, it was okay. But, yeah, ends up being Tumaco there, which is tough. All right. We can see a tiny hint of the wing mirror on the bottom here. And once again, I don't think I need to go into, like, why it's Guatemala, like we see the wing mirror. The only other place in Latin America, as I mentioned, that's going to have the wing mirror is the Dominican Republic, but it's just much too hilly to be Santiago de los Caballeros or Santo Domingo. Obviously, you will get a mountain north in Santiago de los Caballeros, but the coverage doesn't go into the mountains here. You'll just be looking at the mountain. So, should be in Guatemala, and it was east of Guatemala City. We'll move into the last round in which we get another Guatemala. Region guess-wise... Like, we do have some rock walls here, like some just random rock strewn on the side of the road, which kind of reminds me of, like, the Yucatan Peninsula, so maybe you go somewhere up here near Flores, because there is coverage here, and I guess that does make a decent amount of sense for that. And it was, okay, that also makes sense. It's around the volcano there. All right, fair enough. All right, you know what, pretty decent score there. We did get 2 Guatemalas, 1 Uruguay, and, you know, pretty region guessable ones. But we still have 10 rounds left, so let's try our best here. Video is somewhat lengthy so far, but all right. This one, another car meta one. We do see the front of the black car here, with, you know, a very tropical feel, but it also feels very dry at the same time with the soil. So you will get a decent amount of palm trees, but it's also a little bit deserty. Like, you can get cactus on this particular island. And out of the ABC islands, which is Bonaire, Aruba A, Bonaire B, Curacao C, Curacao is going to be the only one with official Google coverage. So we should be in Curacao here. And we'll move on to the next round. Okay. We do have a single yellow line, which is always a good indicator for Mexico, as I mentioned. Very hard to see the hole there. I mean, I can't really tell. It looks like it's probably either rounded or hexagonal, which would fit for Mexico as well. But this exposed front car with the white, blue, white stripe also fits a good amount for Mexico as well. So I think with all of that info, we're gonna have to go Mexico here. Like, single yellow line, one of the best metas, I would say, when you're not sure. And I believe this card does exist in, like, Campeche, Chiapas, Tabasco. So we'll give it a go. And it was just Tabasco there. Kind of just trying to hedge for all 3, but yeah, it does end up... No, it's Chiapas. My bad. Which makes sense. You will get that overexposed car. All right. Once again, we have that single yellow line, baby. It's back. We do have some Spanish there. Something 500 meters. But yeah, we do also have Mexican bollards here with the white tops and just the painted, very slight black bottoms. So we should be in Mexico here with all of those things. Spanish plus the single yellow line plus the very clear Mexican bollards there. And yeah, I'll drop it somewhere in Jalisco. It does end up being the other coast here in Veracruz, like northern Veracruz. But that is tough. All right, new country. We haven't gotten this one yet, so this is good. Another thing to talk about here. White car here in Generation 3. Only going to be found in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. And out of those 3, we should be in Bolivia. And here's why. I'm not sure why we're driving left. No idea why the Google driver has decided to drive left here. But this wiggly style pole, super good meta. And it exists a bunch around Santa Cruz de la Sierra. It seems like they just chopped down random trees, made them into poles. And you will get a lot of these wiggly poles in this particular area. And Bolivia, although, you know, on the west side of the Andes mountain range, whatever mountain range this is, I would assume this is part of the Andes, I guess. It will get like a bit more plateauy and, you know, very high altitude like you'll see in most of Peru. But on the east side of it, like you do see on the east side of Peru. You will get decent greenery, and it is quite flat, especially around Santa Cruz de la Sierra. So in Bolivia, there's only coverage in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, and then most of the stuff to the west of the Andes mountain range. But with the wiggly pole here, plus the white car, should be Santa Cruz de la Sierra adjacent. Chile, I would usually expect to see an indented pole there. And Peru, weird flatness. I feel like it's a bit more Amazon rainforest, like especially in this area. This looks a bit more like Argentina, a little bit, which makes sense. Whereas in the greener parts of Peru, yeah, it will look quite Amazon, because this is still part of the Amazon rainforest up here, but this is not. So yeah, we'll just click somewhere near Santa Cruz de la Sierra. It was east of Okinawa there. Fair enough. And we'll move on to our last round of Seed 4, in which we have a white center line once again. And as I mentioned, those white center lines pretty much only really used in both Chile and Argentina. And once again, this looks quite similar to the other Argentina round we had, with just flat farmland, and we have a bunch of wooden poles. Yeah, would expect to see indented poles here in Chile. So with the white center line, sun being north, and the very flat farmland, and the wooden poles, we would expect to be in Argentina again. This looks like BA to me once again. We do have some random hills which do exist in like the southern part of BA, especially on this 3 road here. You will see some. So I'm gonna drop it somewhere down here, and it was a bit more west, but we do get the right province there, and we get over 20k. All right, let's move into our last seed of the video, and we'll start off in a little bit of a tougher round here, but sun, utilizing the sun, does appear to be south here. We have the shadows from these trees casting to the north, which sun might not always be most reliable in Latin America, because as you can see, like Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil sitting right on the equator, so it's not as useful. There are an abundance, like a lot more pickup trucks in Mexico, over places like Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and stuff like that. And this double pole, this double style pole with the X in the middle, should be a Mexican pole. I don't believe I've seen these in any of the other Latin American countries. So with the sun south plus this pole, you know, this pickup truck, probably not the strongest meta. I wouldn't really use that too often, but yeah, I think all of those fit for Mexico. It does look quite tropical. So I am thinking of going Chiapas, I think, here, because it looks kind of like Guatemala, but it's Gen 4. So I think region guess wise, I think that's kind of my logic we're using here is, yeah, it looks like Guatemala, but Gen 4. So I'm going to click Chiapas. Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense as well. This is new Gen 4 coverage. Why did it look divided on the map? Or in that location, but it's not divided there. All right, well, regardless, it's an okay guess. It was very close to Guatemala and Belize, so we'll take it. Move on to our next round here. I don't believe we've gotten to Peru today, and this is Peru, and here's why. Peru has typically a lot of concrete poles like this, and they like to paint them black at the bottom. You can kind of see how it's painted black at the bottom of this concrete pole here. Yellow dashed line as well, and it looks like we're quite high up in the mountains. Look at these huge, massive mountains. And a lot of mountains in Peru won't be very green. You'll typically get a lot of just like random dry treeless mountains in Peru. And the reason why this isn't Chile, although it can have a similar landscape, is Chile. Typically, if you see a yellow line, you'll see yellow outer lines as well. So just having the yellow center line here, it should be Peru. Chile can have similar style mountains, but it should just be Peru here with the mountains. Region guess wise, I mean, I guess with the drier mountains, it definitely looks a bit more south here. In the southern half of the country, as we fringe on, I guess this is part of the Atacama Desert, so as we get down into the main section of the Atacama Desert there in Chile, it makes a lot of sense to have like treeless, very barren hills. All right, tough. All right, we'll move into the next round here. I think we do have... All right. On this round, this one's a bit tougher, I would say, to differentiate between the Argentina round that we had, where it was just like open farmland like this, and a Uruguay. Uruguay, obviously, as I mentioned, stuck in Gen 3, but you have this slight haze to the cam, whereas if you play enough GeoGuessr, you'll kind of notice it on these Gen 3 rounds, and you can kind of see it on this one. And I just noticed it just by seeing like 1,000 Uruguay locations in my lifetime. Uruguay as well, you'll typically get a ton of dirt roads, just random dirt road coverage in Gen 3. It's probably paved now in Gen 4, but because this country hasn't been covered for like 10 plus years, yeah, we're still stuck in like the mid 2010s with most of this coverage. So country could look different today, but this is what we're working with in Google Street View. So a lot of dirt roads as well. Typically, we're seeing dirt road coverage. Hard to see. I don't think this is a trident pole here, but we do have that slight haze of the cam, the Generation 3 camera, plus the dirt road, and it being very flat. All of those things pointing me towards Uruguay, and it's a pretty decent plonk there. And we'll move on to round 4. All right. Double yellow line on this one, not a single, and we do have those cat eyes in the middle that I mentioned previously, that you will get typically a lot in Brazil. So Brazil, obviously double yellow line, plus just random reflectors or cat eyes in the middle of the road. Plus there's an abundance of red soil, as we can see on the side of the hill here. So I think those three things, although we don't have a pole, definitely point us towards Brazil. And I think in terms of it being quite rolling hill-ish with it still being green, I think something around Minas Gerais once again makes sense, but like Brazil, very hard country to guess. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was even further south or further north. So we'll see. And it's Paraiba. I will move on to the last round here, in which it looks like we have a Colombia here, I think. I want to say so. Although it's hard to see, it does look like we have a horizontal crossbar on this sign here, which would indicate to us the Colombian cross. I'm between Colombia and Mexico, actually. I can't really see if there is a yellow plate on this car here, which would obviously be very helpful in this situation. But I think Colombia, I'm going strictly based off of the crossbar here. The little Colombian cross that's on the back of most traffic signs in Colombia. Hard to see what this pole is as well. It doesn't look octagonal to me. It's a double-laned 2-lane highway. We have a mountain in the background here to the south. I'm trying to think of where it makes sense here. And I'm struggling to think of where this could be. I mean, maybe this makes sense with the mountain here. I mean, we'll try it. All right, I'm strictly going off of the fact that I think I see a crossbar there, so let's try it. Okay, it was this road. All right, very nice. I mean, that's a good way to end off the video. We do get the right pretty much stretch of road there. Quite happy with that. And struggling to think of a place with that angle of road with the mountain like kind of southeast of us, because there's not many places with a 2-laned road that really fits. So this was the best. And yeah, we'll take that guess. It's a very good one to end off the video. So we get 24 out of 25 countries right. Could have been better. If you got a 25, drop it in the comments down below. Happy to hear from you. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. It's been a long one. It's been a long slog, but I do like doing these play and explain videos, just to help, try to help out the community a little bit. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. Drop any feedback that you guys have for me down below. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another GeoGuessr video. Peace.